Greetings, class, and welcome to another lesson here in linguistics. We're going to be studying clauses today, finite verb clauses. This is probably where we're getting toward the end of our description of the syntax, the rules of grammar. Understand this is a cursory view, but this segment and the next two that we're going to be looking at are the most difficult for us to grapple with. Please ask questions. If you want more examples, I can give you those as well. But understand, this is the hard stuff. We're getting toward the end here, and hopefully you're going to be able to understand this. I will try to make it as understandable as possible, I hope. Today, again, we're going to be dealing with finite verbs. We're going to talk about the differences between simple, compound, complex, dependent, independent. We'll talk about subordinates versus relatives, and we'll also hopefully talk about restrictive and non-restrictive. Let's begin right now with just talking about the clauses that are out there. As I mentioned just earlier, there are a variety of clauses. There's the subordinate clause, a relative clause, and relative clauses are probably adverbial. There's an adverb clause, there's a noun clause, there's an adjective clause, and so today we're going to look at these. Clause is just a subject and a verb. Okay, just generic phrase there. We have a clause. So if I have run fast, that's a clause. If I have I eat, that's a clause. A sentence is a subject and a verb that can also stand alone. So I can say I eat, and that's all I need. Right? I eat every day, period. Subject and a verb, I'm done. It's a full sentence. It can stand by itself. If I say the sentence after the movie finished, period, doesn't work. It's not a sentence, okay? So a sentence or an independent clause is a sentence. I'm sorry. Let me say that again. An independent clause, it is a clause, subject verb, but it can also stand alone. I can do subject verb, period, and it's a complete sentence. Okay? It's legal. So that's a sentence, okay? Something that isn't a sentence is a subject verb, probably has a marker, and it can't stand alone. Okay? So you got three things here. You've got a clause, subject verb. You've got a sentence, which is subject verb and can stand alone. Okay? It's an independent clause, doesn't need anybody else. And then you've got a dependent clause. It's a subject verb, probably has a marker, a subordinator, some type of connecting word in front of it, and it can't stand alone. It's a dependent clause. You see the difference between these four things: clause, sentence, independent sentence, right? Independent clause, dependent clause, okay? Remember that you're going to have a marker there probably. Here's the notation, right? SV. This one is going to be MSV, okay? Now, not all markers are the same, but I tend to use the word marker simply because it's easier to understand. Let's go on. Sentence varieties. You have a simple sentence. I ate, right? You have a simple sentence. You've got subject, verb. Simple sentence, right? I walked the dog. Subject, verb. Okay, not a problem. You have a compound sentence, which is SV, and then you have plus another SV. Okay? I walked the dog, and I went to the park, and I walked the dog. I went to the park, and I walked the dog. I've got two independent sentences connected with something like and, but, or type of a connector. So I've got two independent clauses together. Let's compound. Okay? Simple, compound. Complex is where you're going to have SV. You've got I went to the park. MSV. Oh, that's ugly. MSV. Okay? I went to the park because the dog wanted to run. Okay? For something like that. I went to the park because it was a nice day. Right? Or I can also do MSV, comma, SV, right? I went to the park because it was a nice day. I went to the park. Okay, so those are legal. That would be a legal sentence. It's two clauses. One's an independent, one's a dependent, right? And there's two orders. If it's SV, MSV, no comma. If it's MSV, then I need a comma, and then SV, right? Because I went to the park, comma, the dog was happy. Okay, something like that. All right? Same thing here. If I have MSV, I'm going to need a comma here. I'm sorry, if I have SV, I'm going to need a comma here between them. I went to the park, comma, and I played with the kids. Right? I need a comma there. Compound complex is combining these two. Right? It's where you have multiple, you've got at least 3 segments. In this example here, you've got 2 segments, subject, verb, subject, verb. In this one here, you've got 2 segments, subject, verb, marker, subject, verb. And this one, of course, is going to be 2 independents and at least 1 dependent. Okay. I went to the store and bought some milk because mom needed to make eggs. Because mom needed to make a cake, I guess I should say. Okay, so that's 3 parts, and so there's the differences between them. Okay, you should know all that vocabulary. Let's move on. So now we have these subordinate clauses. A subordinate clause is basically an MSV. Okay, it's an MSV. MSV, marker, subject, verb, just like we saw before, right? These up here. MSV, dependent clauses. A dependent clause can be a subordinate clause, okay? And you've got different types of subordinate clauses. You've got adverbial clauses and adjectival clauses. Adverbial, it's an adverb. It's describing the verb. And then you have adjectival, it's an adjective. It's describing the adjective, right? So you've got, you also have, so you've got a relative clause, which is going to be describing a noun, okay? That's why it's adjectival. And then you have a relative adverbial, that's describing the verb, okay? And we'll take a look at some examples of those in just a second here. Here are some positions and places that show different types of subordinate clauses. Okay, that is the man who ran away. Now, what is who ran away? Okay, who is your marker. It's also your subject. Okay. What does who represent? Who, it describes the man. So that's the man, period. The man ran away. Okay. So we take this, the man ran away, we convert that to who, and we put it at the beginning of this clause. Okay. Who ran away. So now we have MSV. There's your subordinate clause, right? In formal English, that's the man who ran away. Understand that man here is in the object, but here it's the subject, right? And here it's the subject, so forth. It's going to be the first thing. That's the man who I saw yesterday. Again, this is marker, but this is not subject. This is object. Okay? That's the man who I saw yesterday. What's the original sentence? That's the man, period. I saw him yesterday. Okay? So what we do here is we take him. Can I do this? We take him. Okay, we cross it out. We make it who. We make it who, and then we send it front. Okay, so I saw him yesterday. I want to make it a clause, so I make that a who, and I put it up front. That's the man who I saw yesterday. Okay, without the relative, that's the man I saw yesterday. Same thing. We just removed the that, right, or the who in this case. And more formal settings, that's the man whom I saw yesterday. The reason why it's whom is because it's the object. Remember, we looked over here, it's the object. I saw him. Who's doing the seeing? I am. Okay, I's the subject. The object is what I saw. Okay, and that's him. And because it's the object, who says it's the subject case. Whom says it's the object case. So in formal English, you would say, that's the man whom I saw yesterday. Now, in reality, virtually nobody uses that form anymore. Most people say, that's the man who I saw yesterday. Most people, when they write a paper, most articles that are written would not use the word whom. It's fallen out of favor. Okay? Let's go on here. That's the man who I gave the letter to. Okay, and here it's I gave the letter to. This is an indirect clause, indirect object, this thing here. The original sentence is I gave the letter to him, right? I gave him the letter. Okay, and we take him again and we throw it up front with who as who, and that's why we have the marker here is again marker indirect object, right? That's the man I gave the letter to. Get rid of the who there, right? That's the man who I gave the letter to. That's the man I gave the letter to. That's the man to whom I gave the letter. Okay? All of these are proper forms. But you see how we have two sentences here. We've got the independent clause, that's the man, and then we have the dependent clause, right? Who I gave the letter to whom I gave the letter. I gave the letter to, right? All of these. All of these are your marker subject verb, right? Now in this one here, it's interesting that the who, even though it's missing, it's understood. It's been removed, but it's still the marker. There's going to be a marker right here. It's not there right now. We took it out. But it's originally it's there, as you can see over here. Originally it's here, and originally it's here, right? Okay? So that's the dependent clause. That's the subordinated clause. Let's go down to the next one. That's the man who I was talking about. These are the same things, right? I was talking about him, right? That's the man I was talking about. That's the man who I was talking about. Okay, again, the who here is missing. That is the man about whom I was talking. This is the proper formal way of saying it. But again, all of these, it's a dependent clause. You've got the main clause, that is the man, and then you have marker, subject, verb. We okay with this? Let's move on to the next one. That's the man whose sister I know. Okay, that's the man's sister. I know the man's sister, right? That's the man's sister. I know the man's sister. Okay, the man's sister. So we make that whose sister I know. Okay, and there it is in the other one. Again, we have that's the man, subject verb, and then we have marker, subject, and then verb. Marker, subject, and then verb. Okay. And the last one here. That's the man who I am taller than. I'm taller than him, right? That's the man, I'm taller than him. Him becomes the marker, and it gets sent up front again. So we have, where are we here, right? So we've got who, and then is the marker. I'm taller than him. Him becomes who, and it gets sent up front. That's the man I'm taller than. That's the man than whom I'm taller. Okay? Again, we don't use this form anymore. We don't use it anymore. We okay with all of these? You understand we're looking at marker, subject, verb with the main, with the dependent clause, and then the independent clause is subject, verb. And this is just different ways to connect them. I'm also trying to show you where this relative clause marker comes from. Okay, comes from the other word, the word man. That is the man. I saw the man. The man becomes who, and it gets sent to the front. Okay, all of these are that way. That's the man. I gave the letter to the man. Well, the man again becomes who, and it gets sent up front. All right? Hope you understand. Questions, please ask. Let's look at adverbial clauses. These are all adjectives. They're all describing the man, right? The man who ran away, man. The man I saw yesterday, man. Okay? They're all adjectival. These are adverbial. These are going to describe verbs. Adverbial clauses, subordinate clauses, are going to describe the verb in terms of time or place, manner, cause, or condition. Okay? So things that are related to time, like after, right? After is a time. After, before. As soon as you see after, before, and you have subject, verb after it, you know it's a clause. You know it's a dependent clause. Okay? The same thing with etc. Where can be both. Where can be an adverbial clause. Where can be a noun clause. Okay? But it can also be place. And here, in this case, it's adverbial, right? A place. In this sense, manner, I felt like I was, marker, subject, verb, right? I felt like I was going to be sick, right? So here in this case, like is going to be an adverbial clause marker. Cause. He fell asleep because. Okay, you see reason as a marker, and that's what because is. It's a reason, right? Because he worked all night. Marker, subject, verb, right? You see it all here. He fell asleep, period, right? Or he fell asleep because he worked all night, period. Okay? Very legal. SV, MSV, right? We've got subject, verb, and then we have marker, subject, verb. I could switch it around. Because he worked all night, comma, right? He fell asleep. You see how this puts together, yes? Then we have conditional. Unless I call, do not expect me to come. Do not expect me to come unless I call, right? Here it's at the beginning. Marker, subject, verb. MSV, comma. See the comma there, right? And then you, which is an unspoken, this is a command. You do not expect me to come. Okay? So these are all subordinate clauses. Okay? And subordinate means lower, less important. The subordinate clause has to be attached to the independent clause. Okay? A subordinate clause is dependent. All right? It's not the main subject and verb. Hope you understand. Let's take a look at an example, right? Jane washed the dishes because Jill made the meal, period, right? Okay, so we have a full sentence here. We have Jane washed the dishes. I see a mark right here, okay? The minute I see the word because, I realize I got to split this. This is a complete sentence, right? Jane washed the dishes. Okay, so I've got a noun phrase, Jane. I have a verb, washed, right? So I need verb phrase, main verb, washed. The dishes, again, another noun phrase. It's the direct object. What did she wash? So I need verb phrase, noun phrase, two dishes. Because, ding, ding, that's a clause marker, right? That's a subordinating conjunction. And so what does all of this do? All of this is adverbial, right? It describes the washing. Why did she wash the dishes? Oh, she washed the dishes because Jill made the meal. So because this part here, right, this part over here, because it describes the washing, okay, this is going to be an adverb. And that's why right here, under verb phrase, I put adverb. Because this section right here is now describing. Here, I can't tell where it is. This section right above here, right here, right? It's describing the other part, right? The washed part. And so that's why it's an adverb. So I put in an adverb, but it's not just a regular adverb. It's a full sentence. So I put in the subjunctor, the subjunctive, the subordinating conjunction, and then off of this I put in another sentence. Okay. Why do I put another sentence? Because it's a subject verb. I've got a subject, bing. I've got a verb, bing. Okay, so I'm going to have a noun phrase, and I'm going to have a verb phrase. Okay, but all of this has to fit under the adverbial phrase. Okay, I hope you understand that. So we've got the adverbial phrase, we've got the subordinating conjunction. Because. And then we've got your sentence. And because it's a sentence, what's it need? It needs a subject and a verb. Noun phrase, verb phrase. Jill made the meal. Okay, it's not an independent clause, mind you. It's a dependent clause. But we're going to put an S here anyway because it's a sentence with a marker, right? It's a dependent clause here. We're going to put in that marker, and then we're going to put in the other parts. I hope you understand how that's breaking down. Again, if you have questions, please ask. Let's take a look at restrictive and non-restrictive clauses. Okay, a restrictive clause, the marker, subject, verb, the dependent clause inside. If it's restrictive, it's necessary. If I don't have that piece in the sentence, I don't understand who you're talking to. I don't understand who you're talking about in the example I give, for example. My brother, who lives in Chicago, is a doctor. Now, you'll notice I have no commas here. Okay? Because in this sentence, you don't know what I mean by brother unless I put in who lives in Chicago. In other words, I've got 5 brothers. And so I say to you, my brother who lives in Chicago is a doctor. If I were just to say, my brother lives in Chicago, you wouldn't understand. Which brother? You've got 5 of them. My brother, oh, the one who lives in Chicago. That brother who lives in Chicago. Okay. Because I need the information to understand, no commas. Okay? Non-restrictive is just the opposite. I don't need the information. I don't need the information, so we set it off with commas. Okay? My brother, I only have 1, comma, who lives in Chicago, by the way, comma, is a doctor. Okay? So, if it's required, no commas. If it's not required, commas. Understand? Okay. Good. Let's move on. Let's take a look at an example of diagramming a relative clause. We've got here, Jane washed the dishes, and then we have the word here, which were in the sink. And so I see which, and I say, hoo-hoo, that's a marker. I know I'm going to have a cutoff here, right? And I will have a cutoff. The dishes which were in the sink. Well, what is this doing here? This which were in the sink is describing dishes. Which dishes? Oh, the dishes in the sink dishes. I see. So this is an adjective. It's describing dishes. But it's also a clause. Which dishes were, subject, verb, right? Which here is marker, subject, right? What's the original sentence? Jane washed the dishes, period. The dishes were in the sink, right? And since I've got the dishes, the one in the second sentence becomes which and gets pushed up front. So this is now marker subject, okay? So when we diagram the sentence, we have noun phrase Jane. We've got a verb here, so we got verb phrase, main verb, washed. And we have the dishes, which is another noun phrase. We go to the verb phrase, we come off of that noun phrase, dishes. Now we have which. Ho, ho, hold on a minute. Which again is starting a new sentence. So we've from off of the verb phrase, it's an adjective. Remember, this describes dishes, so it's an adjective, but it's also a new sentence. So off of adjective, I start a new sentence. And we have a noun phrase, the dishes. We have a verb phrase, were. Okay, so we got verb phrase, main verb, right? Were, where were they? It's an adverb in the sink. Oops, we missed something here, which is we need our preposition. Ching. And then off of here we have our preposition and our noun phrase, right? The sink. Okay? So here's how we're going to diagram relative clauses. I've got no marker here this time, mind you, because it's which is the subject, right? It's going to be marker subject or marker object here, right? Okay. That's how you break it down. These are your key terms. If you do have any questions, please let me know. You should understand what all these parts are. And again, if you do have any questions, please let me know, and I'll talk to you later.